more on this, the man who's been breaking the news on this subject and so much more, Becket Adams, joins us now. He's a columnist for National Review, The Washington Examiner, The Hill. He's also with the National Journalism Center. Becket, good to have you with us, sir.
Thanks. So great to be with you again, Vince.
So first and foremost, I had no idea that Jill Biden got her own intro music. Why did this happen? When did this happen?
Okay, so it's understandable because this was short-lived. The funny thing about this resurfacing is this is a story I wrote in 2022, and it was short-lived because it's one of those stories where it's a person who knew a person, wanted to tell and didn't really know. Eventually, it fell into my lap. It was one of these no fingerprint stories. Oh no, we want to tell the story. And so I did it, and it turned out that, yeah, she had her own walk-up music. The way the story was told, or the sources explained it, is that her office approached the band and said, no, they wanted a unique entrance song for her, and basically said, come up with one. The band was rushed, according to the source, and they did come up with this, and they performed it at least 2 White House functions where the First Lady was the headliner. And then shortly after I published my piece, which the First Lady's spokesperson vigorously denied. About a couple months later, I was again contacted by someone in the know who informed me that they had quietly retired the song because apparently the negative news coverage did not go over well.
Because people noticed that the Imperial First Lady had her own music, just like Hail to the Chief.
Right. So, they may have felt a little embarrassed. One source specifically said it was negative news coverage was the reason for quietly putting it away. And so, to your point, why you hadn't heard of this is a story or a song that had a lifespan of about maybe 2 months before it got shelved, partly because of writing about it. Now, it's one of those things that is just funny. When I wrote the story, it was kind of, when it came to me, this wasn't Watergate. It wasn't the biggest scandal. And it seemed to me amusing sort of human interest story, and I had a little bit of fun kind of researching it, finding source material, secondary confirmation, talking to outside experts like White House historian Tevi Troy, and, asking me, is this normal? Like, do First Ladies normally ask for this, et cetera, et cetera? And he said, no, by the way, that's not normal. It was the White House response from the First Lady's office actually kind of made it, the story went from amusing to kind of weird based on how sort of aggressively they pushed back on it. It was professional but aggressive, because you can't be too aggressive with someone who you're talking to. You don't want to write the story, but it was a level of denial that to me seemed incompatible, or at least not commensurate with how silly the story felt to me.
Well, there's a message in here for communications professionals in Washington on how to handle requests for comment like this. And the First Lady's office apparently screwed this up big time. So you saw this. The F Troop comparison, have you ever heard that until now? Did you know that it sounded exactly like the F Troop thing?
I had not. This was actually today. It was a friend of mine was actually shared the story because, we can get to this later, but in retrospect, the story doesn't seem so amusing, and now it feels a little bit more like The Usual Suspects when Agent Kuyan looks at the corkboard and realizes all the goofy things he's been staring at actually point to a clue that was in front of you the whole time. So,
yes.
The First Lady kind of her office asking for this honorific doesn't seem so amusing now, considering where we are with Joe Biden and whatever's going on with his health. But to the point with her office, they flat denied it and said absolutely nothing about this is true. But what I can say, without revealing too much about my sources, is that I have them dead to rights. I have source materials. It's 100% happened. So having them flat out deny something I know to be true is what made it feel pretty weird pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as F Troop, I hadn't actually heard F Troop till this morning. So that's a fun little spin on it.
Isn't that fun? And you kind of wonder, like, what was the MO? What was the thought process behind choosing that song? Because it sounds like it's exactly like that intro music. Again, but we'll see. Maybe your source will feed you more information on the subject. But the reason this is coming up, as you point out, Becket, is because at this moment there's a very Lady Macbeth vibe coming out of the White House that Jill Biden is desperately holding on to power. I've seen a lot of people compare her to Edith Wilson in the waning days of the Woodrow Wilson presidency, taking over, running the office of the presidency in her husband's failing health. This is all, really coming out. And then you get this big Vogue magazine cover that came out just after the debate, emphasizing that Jill Biden is going to, the cover said something like, "We will decide our future" on Vogue. All of that adds up to, man, this woman really wants to hold on to power.
Right. And so, like, again, with the sort of usual suspects analogy, like things that felt like just a little quirkiness or kind of amusing, they don't seem so amusing anymore. This feels like part of a pattern that's a lot less funny. When I kind of, the story came into my lap and I started investigating it, like I was saying, it was amusing. I was like, get it, girl. Indulge yourself a little. You got the most boring job in the world, and you got a useless honorific to a meaningless degree. So, indulge yourself a little. Why not? Have a little fun with it. But, after one thing after another, and then, watching as the president essentially is being dragged around a semi-lifeless corpse on the campaign trail, this stuff isn't really amusing anymore. It's actually starting to feel pretty dark. And pretty depressing.
Have you begun to see any questions about Jill's role from the traditional press corps at all? Because I feel like there are questions right now about the health lies that the White House has been telling, and certainly the health of the President of the United States and the likeliness of him staying on as the nominee. Those are all in bounds. But at the moment, I'm not seeing much of a turn against Jill by the press corps.
Not yet. There's a very small drip. Like, for instance, it was revealed either last night or this morning that she has been sitting in on some pretty high-level meetings with her husband, and has been for quite a while now, which raises the obvious question, what sort of security clearance does she have? But then there's the other question of, why is she in these meetings? Does this fall under her purview? Is this normal? No, it's not normal. First Lady generally doesn't, join the president in the situation room for these sort of things.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to be seeing a little bit more. I mean, a lot of this depends on how this election turns out. If Joe Biden loses, the people who've been leaking, the sort of torrent of leaks about his health and him falling asleep at European summits, et cetera, the people who've been leaking that, I guarantee you, they have a very thick dossier on Jill Biden that they are just sitting on right now. Right now, it's a very small drip, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like right now the effort to sort of pressure Joe off the campaign trail is losing steam.
Yes.
But if it comes to a Hail Mary pass or desperation, they might start going after her directly in terms of the pressure campaign.
It strikes me that the person with the most incentive in the world to leak Jill's current behavior right now is Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris would like to be the president of the United States. She would certainly like to be the nominee. At the moment, her public presentation is that she stands with Joe, because what else is she going to say? But it's not a secret, Becket Adams, that the two women do not like each other. In fact, it's been reported pretty extensively since the beginning of the administration that Jill Biden really resents that Kamala Harris portrayed her husband as a racist during the 2020 primary, and she's never lived that down.
Yeah, well, it's terms of rumors and whispers in the White House. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris apparently don't quite get along, but which isn't new. George W. and Dick Cheney for a long time were kind of on the outs over Scooter Libby. So it's not unusual for a president and his vice president to sort of be on the outs, but I think there's a personal element here between the Bidens and the Harris clans. And I think the way things are going now, I mean, in a weird way, it's almost comforting if Kamala and her team are the ones responsible for the leaks, because it's very cunning and very clever, and that's not something I thought they were capable of. So I'm like, all right, look, if they're going to ascend the throne in Joe Biden's place, at least, someone who's cunning and clever. That's more than I could expect or hope for at this point. So that's the best I can do. But yeah, I think, whomever is responsible for this and who's been, I mean, you've seen this since the debate. It's just a torrent of insider information. All of these things, there are anecdotes from Biden's behavior from 2022 that we're just now hearing about. So somebody or some person or some team just has a mountain of information that they're giving to everyone. And that's the other thing, too, if you've noticed as part of the strategy. It's not just one reporter. It's not like, say, Maggie Haberman has the inside scoop.
Yeah.
Everyone is getting a piece of the pie. Reuters, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, everyone's getting exclusive scoops. And so it's just a shotgun blast at this point. And I guarantee you the person who has all this dirt or all these unflattering anecdotes about the president, they have an equal amount, or maybe not equal, but they certainly have a dossier on the wife, on Jill, who she will, if they lose, she will bear a lot of blame for having sort of forced the issue, and instead of kind of, consulting her husband and talking him out of it, et cetera, playing such a pivotal role, which she has been. Whether she's tweeting out pictures of herself claiming she's preparing for the G7 summit, or stuff like having her own Hail to the Chief, or her appearing on the campaign trail and taking such a forward role on this, and in places where, again, it's not normal for a First Lady to be there, like in the Situation Room at these high-level meetings. She will catch a lot of hell if they lose, and I guarantee that people who are doing the leaking now have plenty of stuff to say about her, and you will hear it.
I believe it. Becket Adams, who has every job in the world. Thank you, sir. Good to talk to you today.